Tonight, a secret operation shatters Miami's power circle. A $2 billion drug empire hidden behind luxury walls just got exposed.
At 1:17 a.m., a routine police response outside a massage business in Texas triggered an investigation that federal agents would later describe as one of the most disturbing trafficking operations uncovered in the state in years. The original call was simple. Disturbance reported. Possible assault. One injured individual attempting to flee the scene. Nothing about it initially suggested federal involvement. But within the next several hours, local authorities would recover encrypted phones, coded transaction logs, and hidden records pointing towards something much larger than a violent incident inside a massage parlor. Because what investigators uncovered was not an isolated criminal business. It was a structured network operating behind legitimate storefronts across multiple states. And according to federal investigators, the network had been protected from inside the system itself. At 1:24 a.m., officers entered the building through the front reception area. The interior appeared ordinary at first glance. Dim lighting. Reception desk. Small waiting area. Standard treatment rooms. But one officer noticed something unusual almost immediately. Several interior cameras had been disconnected manually just minutes before police arrived. Not damaged. Disconnected. As officers cleared the rear hallway, they discovered a locked security door hidden behind a storage partition near the laundry section of the building. The business owner claimed the area was used for maintenance equipment. But investigators quickly noticed fresh electronic locks installed along the frame. At 1:31 a.m., officers breached the secured door. Behind it was a narrow staircase leading underground. And what they found below immediately changed the direction of the case. Inside the lower level were multiple secured rooms containing medical equipment, refrigerated storage units, digital payment terminals, and stacks of coded documents referencing patient transfers, transportation schedules, and abbreviated medical terminology investigators did not yet understand. One detective later described the scene as too organized to be accidental. Nothing appeared improvised. Everything was structured. Documented. Controlled. Within minutes, local authorities contacted state investigators. By 2:03 a.m., federal agencies had been notified. And by sunrise, the Federal Bureau of Investigation had officially entered the case. But the deeper investigators looked, the stranger the financial activity became. At first, analysts focused on transaction records recovered from 2 encrypted laptops seized during the initial search. The amounts themselves were not extraordinary. Most transfers ranged between $4,000 and $9,800. Small enough to avoid automatic federal reporting thresholds. But the pattern was highly unusual. The transfers moved through dozens of shell entities connected to wellness clinics, transportation companies, and medical consulting firms spread across Texas, Arizona, Florida, and California. Individually, the businesses appeared legitimate. Together, they formed a financial corridor. A system designed to move money continuously without attracting attention. Within days, forensic accountants discovered that several massage businesses connected to the investigation shared nearly identical ownership structures despite operating under different names. The same mailing addresses appeared repeatedly. The same legal representatives surfaced across multiple filings. And the same payment routing behavior appeared inside nearly every financial account tied to the network. That was the moment investigators realized this operation was not local. It was coordinated. As the investigation expanded, federal analysts began reviewing medical procurement records connected to the businesses. The purchases raised immediate concern. Large quantities of surgical-grade equipment had been ordered through intermediary vendors over a period of nearly 4 years. Portable refrigeration systems. Specialized transport containers. Restricted medical supplies. None of which matched the licensing classification of wellness spas or massage clinics. At 4:42 p.m. 3 days later, federal investigators executed emergency subpoenas targeting additional business records. What they uncovered transformed the case completely. Hidden beneath layers of legitimate transactions were coded transportation schedules tied to cross-state movement patterns. Vehicles traveled between clinics at unusually consistent intervals. Drivers used rotating routes designed to avoid repeated highway surveillance. And every transfer coincided with clusters of structured financial activity. The system was synchronized. And that synchronization suggested centralized control. But the most alarming discovery came from internal communications recovered from a confiscated encrypted phone. Messages referenced approvals. Not criminal approvals. Administrative approvals. Licensing renewals. Inspection clearances. Permit accelerations. At first, investigators believed the network was bribing external officials. But forensic review showed something far more dangerous. Certain regulatory complaints had vanished entirely from municipal databases. Inspection failures had been manually overridden. Multiple facilities received unusually rapid licensing renewals despite ongoing violations. And reports submitted by concerned employees had been closed without review. This was no longer just organized crime. This was institutional protection. By week 3, investigators identified at least 30 individuals connected to the network through administrative access, licensing authority, or regulatory oversight. Some were city employees. Others worked inside contracting departments, transportation systems, and regional inspection agencies. None appeared connected publicly. But internally, the pattern was impossible to ignore. The operation wasn't hiding from the system. It was operating through it. At that point, the Department of Justice authorized a coordinated federal investigation involving the FBI, ICE, financial crime analysts, and interstate trafficking units. But agents understood something critical. If the network detected surveillance too early, the entire structure could disappear overnight. So they waited. And they watched. Over the next 4 months, federal teams tracked encrypted communications moving between facilities across 4 states. Investigators identified hidden scheduling systems coordinating movement between clinics. Financial analysts mapped more than $200 million flowing through layered shell companies connected to consulting groups, medical suppliers, and logistics firms. The money moved constantly. Breaking apart. Reforming. Re-entering the system under legitimate labels. Consulting fees. Equipment leasing. Transportation contracts. But beneath the paperwork, investigators believed the funds were supporting a much larger trafficking infrastructure. At 11:14 p.m. on a Thursday night, surveillance teams observed coordinated activity across 7 facilities simultaneously. Vehicles arrived within minutes of each other. Encrypted communications spiked. Financial transfers accelerated. And several locations suddenly wiped internal server activity remotely. Federal command interpreted the movement as preparation. The network suspected exposure. The next morning, the operation was approved. At 4:12 a.m., sealed federal warrants were authorized. At 4:47 a.m., tactical teams mobilized across Texas, Florida, Arizona, and California. No sirens. No public warning. Only synchronized movement. By 5:03 a.m., communications suppression protocols were activated around primary target locations. And at exactly 5:31 a.m., the first breach order was given. Federal agents stormed the primary Texas facility first. Simultaneously, ICE units moved on transportation hubs tied to interstate movement routes. Financial crime teams secured server rooms connected to payment infrastructure. DOJ investigators isolated administrative offices believed to contain internal approval records. Inside one location, agents discovered rows of encrypted workstations operating dedicated routing software designed to fragment transactions automatically across multiple financial institutions. At another site, investigators uncovered hidden storage rooms containing falsified identification documents linked to hundreds of fabricated patient records. Nothing about the operation appeared temporary. It had been engineered for long-term survival. By 6:42 a.m., the first arrests began. Not low-level workers. Not temporary participants. System coordinators. Facility managers. Administrative intermediaries. Individuals responsible for maintaining the structure itself. Several arrested officials held legitimate positions connected to licensing and oversight systems. According to investigators, these individuals did not simply ignore the operation. They protected it. Asset seizure teams moved immediately. Federal authorities froze hundreds of accounts tied to the network. Millions in cash assets were seized. Properties connected to shell corporations were secured. Cryptocurrency wallets linked to transaction routing systems were identified and isolated. For the first time in years, the financial infrastructure supporting the operation stopped moving. But even as the network began collapsing, investigators uncovered something unexpected. Inside a secured server cluster recovered from the primary Texas facility was a secondary database. Not financial records. Not transportation schedules. Names. Individuals connected not to operating the system, but protecting it from investigation. And according to federal analysts, some names extended beyond regional agencies entirely. The implication was impossible to ignore. This network may not have been isolated. It may have been connected to a larger structure operating beyond Texas. By the end of the day, 30 officials and coordinators were in federal custody. Dozens of facilities had been shut down. Millions in assets had been frozen. And investigators were still uncovering new layers of the operation. But the most unsettling realization came later that night. As analysts reviewed the original police response, the violent incident that triggered everything, they discovered the network had not been exposed through advanced surveillance, or a confidential informant, or a federal intelligence breakthrough. It happened because one communication failed to encrypt properly during the chaos outside the building. One message, sent at the wrong moment, visible for less than 20 seconds. Enough for investigators to trace the system backward. Enough to expose years of hidden infrastructure. Which meant for nearly 4 years, the operation had functioned almost perfectly. Undetected. Protected. Integrated into legitimate systems. And investigators now believe, if one failed message exposed this network, others may still be operating silently, without anyone noticing.